Okay, let's try this again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Riverside. And I am so pleased and impressed that you came out in person on this very hot day. So welcome. Our opening hymn for this morning is number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." It will be projected up on the wall as well as being number 16 in the gray hymnal. So feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please remember to keep your mask on if you're singing. And stand if you are able in body or in spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple."
To be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be gentle, 'tis the gift to be fair, 'tis the gift to wake and breathe the morning air, and every day to walk in the path we choose. 'Tis the gift that we pray we may ne'er come to lose. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Thank you. You may be seated. Again, thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where I'm sure you're much cooler. Here we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Tinka Friend and a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate for today. Other members of the worship committee you will hear from include Alec Peck, our music coordinator. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, but with muted electronic devices, please. So here's a moment. If you want to take care of mine. Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenge. This congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human and how we can apply our values to encourage individual and collective growth. So welcome, and we're glad that you are here with us today. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while we are in the sanctuary, please keep your masks on and socially distance. Before we move into the sacred worship hour of our service, there are a few announcements that we would like to share. During the service, we will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is available on our website. The monthly UUCR newsletter comes out the first of every month by email and per request by postal mail. If you have something newsworthy or something that you would like to contribute, email uuchurchofriverside.calendar@gmail.com or call the church office at 951-686-6515. And if you would like to be added to our mailing list, please also contact the church office. Our first Sunday luncheons will be served following this service. Today's theme is salad, so nice and light and cool for this warm day. Contributions are appreciated and will be donated into the church fund. The Concerned UUs of Riverside, CURE, the community outreach arm of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, will be meeting in the Social Justice Room on the second floor of the annex. Is it still going to be 12 o'clock or 11? At 12. At 12 o'clock. You can find more information on the website under Social and Environmental Justice. Church Council will meet on the second Friday of the month in the annex. The next meeting will be at 4 p.m. on September the 9th.
Morning. I just have a quick announcement to make. Riverside is having its first Pride Festival this afternoon. Riverside Pride is a new organization that just started about a year ago, and they're holding their first Pride Festival today, this afternoon, 1 to 9, right across the street here. It's at the amphitheater there. It's free, family friendly. There'll be music, there'll be food, all kinds of stuff. So come check it out. It looks like it'll be a lot of fun. And for our CURE meeting this afternoon, we have heard reports that there might be people protesting the Pride Festival, just because they believe the LGBT people are evil. And so to show our support for Pride, I've made a few signs that I'll be putting up in the grass facing the event. So if anybody wants to join, there's some more materials to make a few more signs so we can have a bunch of support for Pride coming from our lawn to make sure this isn't a place for people to protest that, right? We support what's going on over there. So if you'd like to join after you eat your lunch, come on over to the annex and we'll make a couple more signs to put out front. Thank you.
The auditorium. Thank you, Adam. I would now like to invite up Pat Kawunder, who's going to share with us some sad and fortunate news.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Sad news. Janice Levi, longtime member of the church, passed away on Thursday. She passed away peacefully. Her son Larry was there and reported to me. It was a very peaceful passing. Janice and her family, the Levis, have been long-time stalwart members of this congregation. And over the years, Janice held just about every position She was president, she was vice president, she was secretary, she was treasurer, she was head of women's fed. It goes on and on. She did just about everything. When her kids were young, she was really active in religious education. Anyway, that's why we have the candle lit honoring Janice, and the family will let us know when the memorial service will be held. Hopefully it will be cooler then. Thanks.
Janice was the docent of our church for many, many, many years. She sort of created the docent position and the research and everything. And then she trained me as a docent in the 1990s. So I know I will miss her. In fact, could I ask if we just have like a moment of silence for her? Thank you. And this concludes our announcements for this morning. So I invite you to sit back, take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. For our call to worship, you are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Our sermon today is a reading of Family Stories by Reverend Marjorie Bowen Wheatley. The Reverend Marjorie Bowen Wheatley, who lived between 1949 to 2006, was a Unitarian Universalist minister that served parishes in New York and Florida. She also worked on staff with the UUA before becoming a parish minister. Reverend Bowen Wheatley was a founding member of the African American Unitarian Universalist Ministry and a board member of the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation, among her other positions. She was the author of numerous articles and co-editor with Nancy Palmer Jones of Soul Work, Anti-Racist Theology in Dialogue, which was published in 2002. We are living in complicated times for families, and particularly for our youth. When family and social discord disrupts and threatens life, it is more than a social problem, it is a religious problem, and one that calls people of faith to respond. Today, we will contemplate how our faith can guide us in navigating the challenges that confront our families. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the Occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle, and the second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot that we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Kawia, the Kupena, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's reading of the chalice lighting is by Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and it must be rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. I think the fans are blowing it out. And I must say that as I read this about each of us being rekindled by a spark from another person and with deep gratitude of those that have lighted the flame within us, I thought about Janice. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic, to speak directly into it, and to speak clearly so everyone can hear. Finn, would you be willing to come up and share how you found out about this church? Thank you. So step forward to the mic, tell us your name, how long you've been here, and how you found out about the church.
My name's Finn, and I've been at this church since 2011. I found out about this church through a Pride Festival in Riverside that was held many years ago. And I decided to give it a try, and I loved it and stuck around. And it's a great place.
And Finn has filled many positions here. Thank you. That is how it is done. So if you're new here, if you're a visitor, or if you're an old friend that we haven't seen for a while, please raise your hand, stand, come up to the mic right there that's in front of the pulpit. Is there anyone here? Please come on down. Okay, so just so everyone can hear, Christopher, is that correct? His name is Christopher? And he enjoys the way that we have things set up. Adam? Unfortunately, I couldn't hear a lot. If you were closer, could you come up and share onto the mic? I did hear that you came to this church, I think, in 2007. And people were nice. People were very friendly and nice, and that you knew Janice, and Janice introduced you to Robert. And you through that, you were able to get a job cleaning Robert's house. Is that correct? Well, thank you for coming. And thank you for any service that you have done. Okay, is there anyone else? Come on down, bud.
Good morning. I'm Bud German. I'm here with my wife, Sharon. We were members here. Sorry, I can't tell you the year. For many years, we came here and enjoyed being here. And I just happened to think about being here again. And I said, despite the 100-degree weather and whatever, we wanted to be here today. And there's obviously a reason why we wanted to be here.
Yes.
And why we're here. And I just absolutely feel great in this presence. I always have, and that's why we're here today. And loving everybody. And some I know, some I don't know, but I know them all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you, Bud. It's really nice to see you again, both of you. Is there anyone else here in the sanctuary that would like to come up to introduce themselves? And Adam, do we have anyone online? No? Okay. Then for any other new guests, and old people too, thank you for joining us. And please join us afterwards for socializing and coffee hour after the service. In fact, we have our first Sunday luncheons, which will be immediately following. We would love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you will also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave if you haven't done that already, so that we can know that you were here, and leave your contact information if you want to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at uuchurchofriverside.org. It is said that a shared joy is a double joy. Shared sorrow is half sorrow. On the first Sunday of each month, we share the joys and concerns that we have received from you, and which are collected throughout the month. First, I'm going to read the joys and concerns that were given to us. Can somebody hand me the book? The last thing that was written in here, which was July 31st, was had talked about basically Janice Levi going into hospice. And it is with great sadness, as you heard, that we report the passing of one of our longtime members, Janice Levi, on Thursday, September the 1st. And I don't, some of you, the newer people may not know, but out in front of our church, where we have the big stone sign that has the name, that was actually Janice and her family that, that had that made and put out there, and that was in remembrance of her husband, who also had been a member of the church. And when he died, that was in his memory. So if there's anyone in the sanctuary that would like to speak their own personal joy or concern, please raise your hand and come up to the mic up here by the pulpit so we can all hear. I couldn't hear.
Hello? Hello? Oh,
There.
there. I think this lady had a question about when Janice's husband passed. Do you remember the year?
It was before I joined, and I joined in 1996. So it was before that. I don't know the. Mhm.
So I have a joy I'd like to share. One of my friends just had 3 grandchildren born. One was a little girl, and the other set were a pair of twins. One is a boy and one is a girl, and they're all doing well.
A quiet joy for easing calm at home, and also for possibility that cash flow, instead of being a mythical source, is simply going to be a somewhat present and definitely welcome force coming up in the next month or two, as I'm going to start taking my Social Security. I had thought it was that counted as retirement, but retirement is evidently working for a real company instead of the ones that I had. But yeah, it should make for a less stressful world in these tight times.
But German again. Everybody hear me okay? I have tremendous joy to be here, to be alive and to be well and be in pretty good shape. I'm happy with my life. It's where I am. Very happy about my health. But I have a concern. My wife, Sharon, steadily losing her vision. She's brought so much joy to so many people. It just seems not right that she should have to go through what she's going through. But there's a purpose, there's a reason, and we endure. But it doesn't seem like she deserves it. But eventually, I guess you get to reap what you sow. And she sowed a lot of goodness in this world and continues to do so. I'm happy she'll reap what she deserves. I'm sure she will. Thank you. I'm sorry that I'm.
No,
thank
no.
you.
I truly believe that this church and our gathering together is a sacred act. And within that sacred act, we hold everyone, all of their feelings, all of their fears, all of their joys. We hold that together. We are like the vessel to hold that. So thank you, Bud, for trusting us to hold that with you. Thank you.
I'm Nick Williams. About 5 years ago, I started on a journey of getting my health back. The main part of that was getting rid of a lot of extra weight. So I'm down over 100 pounds now. And I just broke 200, going down, not up, going down. And looking at hopefully getting about 185 and then having that surgery done so that they remove all the extra skin and stuff. That'll probably be 20 pounds more right there. I figure be down to my fighting weight, hopefully early next year.
I have a sorrow that I would like to share. Many of you already know that from August of 2000 to August 2000 and from August 2020 to August 2021, I lost all three of my sisters during the lockdown and could not be there with them or even to gather to grieve together. So my last sister that died of a year ago, August of 2021. We are still in the process. She left a trust, and my brother is the executor of that trust. She left a trust for her grandchildren, her twin granddaughters. They live in Las Vegas. And my brother, because of his health and his partner's health, have not been able to finalize it. So we've got to get all of the legal things and the papers and the deed to the house and all of that finalized and the trust dissolved. So I will be going to help my brother. So this week we are leaving for Las Vegas, and I don't know when we will be back because we have to stay there. My brother and I are the only two siblings left, and he's 86 years old. And his longtime partner for like over 30 years has Alzheimer's, and on Tuesday he's going to have to place her into a facility. So he's dealing with a lot emotionally. He also started passing out and losing consciousness. They think that he probably needs a pacemaker. So that's why I'm going to accompany him in case they've done a lot of tests, and in case the doctor says, get back here immediately, we need to do surgery and it's more than just a pacemaker, I have to be able to step in and take over for what we're in the process of doing. So definitely would like your thoughts, prayers, for the situation that I'm going through, but particularly my brother. That's tough to be going through, having to settle his sister's estate, worried about his own health and when to get back and have surgery, and to put his longtime partner in a home. So thank you.
Good morning. I just wanted to share a relatively simple joy that I felt this morning. It wasn't, as I was driving here, I was just overcome by the smell of the air, even though it was still getting pretty hot. It was earlier in the morning, so it was still fairly cool. And it was just great to be able to breathe. And being thankful for being able to breathe isn't something that you usually think about until shortly after you perhaps haven't been able to. And so it was really nice to be able to focus on that. And the feeling of being alive is something that we feel is very close to the feeling of being able to breathe. And so I also felt, because of that, also just grateful that I was
alive so that I could be here to breathe. Thank you.
Adam, could you stop? Could you just stop there for a second? Thank you. Anyone else? Oh.
Falling gas prices, yeah.
Could you just stand there to place a stone in a minute? Okay, we have one more.
Maybe you have heard that the possible Trump wave is now turning into a ripple thanks to the backlash and people turning out because of Roe. So remember, they are now calling November the election Rovember, and maybe a good time to give to some liberal candidates and causes to maybe be able to keep the House and the Senate. Thank you.
So remembrance that we have an election coming up. And it is important to express your views through your voting. Okay, if there are no others and nothing from online, all right. We place a stone in our water chalice to express the joys and concerns that we have shared with our church community, and in recognition of those that we hold close, but who have not shared. Thank you. May we remember those who have spoken, those that they have named, and those we hold in silence in our hearts. Our hymn now is 1051, We Are, and that's from singing The Journey, which is the teal hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you with your masks on. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing 1051, We Are.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreams. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Please be seated. This portion of our service is to support this beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is in the church website and also in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church receives a percentage. Oh, and Dinah has the cards with her, so if you want to purchase some afterwards out in the parish hall, you may. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. We thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. And will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? Our next hymn is number 402, From You I Receive, from the gray hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but again, only with a mask on. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 402, From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we
Our meditation today is by Timothy Haley. So if you'll get in a comfortable position, take a deep breath. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence. To give thanks for another day. To give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love. To give thanks for the gift of life. Let us open ourselves here and now to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives in this brief moment of time. Now let us pause for a moment of silence as we absorb the wisdom of these words. Now I would like to introduce Grace, who is going to be presenting and reading the sermon, Family Stories.
Thank you, Tinka. Hello, everyone. Just as a side note, this sermon was originally delivered in January of 2015. So some updates have been added to highlight more current events. In Genesis chapter 16 and 21 in the Old Testament, Abraham is named as the first Hebrew patriarch and prophet who made a covenant with God to found the nation of Israel. Because Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all recognize Abraham as their first prophet, they are called the Abrahamic religions. Abraham's wife Sarah was initially unable to bear children and therefore gave Abraham her Egyptian maidservant Hagar to conceive an heir. Ishmael was born and brought up in Abraham's household. Later, Sarah was able to conceive and bore a biological son named Isaac. When I was studying for the ministry, one of the expectations was that each week, the entire community would attend chapel or the worship service. Although I had been a Unitarian Universalist for more than a decade, I was still healing from the pain of my fundamentalist past, and I had not yet mustered the courage to attend chapel in this United Methodist Seminary. But with the support of 3 Unitarian Universalist friends, one Friday toward the end of the first semester, I dragged myself to worship. I wasn't sure what kind of message I would hear, but it was a week before exams, and I hoped for a place where I could center myself and find some internal spiritual resources for the days ahead. To my surprise, there was no sermon. It was early December, and the entire liturgy focused on Advent, ending with a celebration of the Eucharist. Now, I had not attended a Christian communion for over 20 years, but I tried to approach it with an open mind. The prayer offered by Dr. Mark Burroughs began with these words: "We who are the children of Abraham and Sarah." I don't recall the rest of the sentence because in a split second, my mind went blank. It simply refused to be present to this experience that was sacred for most others in attendance. I began to weep, quietly at first, but a whimper soon turned to tears, then uncontrollable tears. My friend sat beside me trying to be supportive, but didn't have a clue what was so upsetting about that simple phrase. We who are the children of Abraham and Sarah. I had no harsh feelings toward Dr. Burroughs, but the moment I heard those words suggesting that I was a descendant of Abraham and Sarah, I felt the pain of exclusion. My rational mind told me that I should not take it literally, that the statement was merely a symbolic reference to our Jewish and Christian heritage. But that rationale didn't help. I simply could not get beyond the complex dynamics of race and class and gender in the biblical story. I knew the story of Abraham and Sarah in the book of Genesis, but I also knew the story of Abraham and Hagar, an Egyptian woman whose ethnicity and social standing made her an outcast in ancient Israel, a stranger in a strange land. As a woman of African heritage, I identified myself as one of Hagar's children, and I wondered why she had not been mentioned in the prayer. Was she not worthy of mention because she was a slave? According to the story, when Hagar's son Ishmael was about 14 years old, Sarah became jealous. Hagar had sacrificed her body and her beauty. She had postponed her life in order to give this elderly couple the gift of a child. And yet, Sarah was jealous. Here were two brothers, Ishmael and Isaac, whose childhood play was no doubt innocent of any social or economic distinctions. And yet, Sarah's worry about inheritance spawned her jealousy, which led to a crisis in the household. In the end, Sarah threw Hagar and Ishmael out of the house, banished them to the wilderness with no food and only a little bit of water. Two brothers were forced apart because of a fight between their parents. Reason is not at the top of the youth agenda, but love is. Brokenness in the family, brokenness in our communities, brokenness in our world. It is an old story, one we know well. When family and social discord disrupts and threatens life, it is more than a social problem. It is a religious problem, one that calls people of faith to respond. Born of the Enlightenment movement, with its abiding faith in the power of human reason, many liberals are at a loss to understand or explain postmodern phenomenon, such as the violence our nation has witnessed in public schools in the past few years. School violence in disadvantaged Black, Latina or Latino and urban areas is an old problem. But until the tragedy at Columbine High School in Colorado on April 20th, 1999, which caused 15 deaths, and more recently at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut, which caused 28 deaths. And on December 14th, on December 4th, 2012, and the May 24th, 2020 shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, which caused 21 deaths, among many other incidents. It seemed that parts of this nation were asleep. Only when schoolyards in white suburban areas became graveyards did people wake up. Following the shootings in Paducah, Kentucky, Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Springfield, Oregon, Littleton, Colorado, and most recently in Santee, California, and Williamsport, Pennsylvania, have we now begun to acknowledge that there is a deep crisis in our nation. When it comes to our children, love is the answer, no matter what the question. We ask what is happening in our schools. Why is there so much violence? But the real question is, what is happening in our society? In a way, it defines reason. Reason, I suspect, is not at the top of the youth agenda today, but love is. In a fast-paced world in which many young people are not self-differentiated, but defined by the culture as consumers, that is, you are what you have or who you hang out with, our children are calling us. In a world of busyness that leaves little time for families to be together, children are crying out for love. In a world with blended families, step families, surrogate families, families with little cohesion, it would not be surprising if many of our children feel confused, unsupported, or experience a loss of identity. All the evidence shows that when children feel loved, typically, they do not express themselves in acts of violence, regardless of the external factors competing for their attention. One expert put it this way: children who make the decision to kill or feel it is forced upon them do so because they are already armed and dangerous. Finding a weapon to express their rage is secondary to the primary fact of there being emotional time bombs. In a recent interview, James Shaw, a writer who interviewed youth who are incarcerated for violent crimes, explained that violence is often centered around family issues such as a sense of alienation and isolation, chronic feelings of being unloved, unloving, and unlovable, a desperate sense of feeling worthless, not knowing how to handle constant bullying, not having fixed or positive role models among the adults in their lives, and easy access to drugs, including alcohol. Just as I suspect both Isaac and Ishmael might have felt after the breakup of their household, our children are desperately crying out for answers. The answer, I believe, is deceptively simple. When it comes to our children, love is the answer, no matter what the question. We answer all their questions to the extent that we support, love, nurture, and care for our children. As a nation, we are in a deep cultural depression as well as a spiritual crisis. Of course, we need to do something about the availability of handguns. Of course, media violence has an influence, and we adults bear responsibility for curbing both. That goes without saying. But this is not a problem from which we adults can exempt ourselves. We simply cannot blame the youth of our youth culture for we are they. They are our children. They come from our homes. Cornel West described the problem with one of those big words, nihilism, which simply means profound alienation that expresses itself in destructive ways. West says that nihilism is a monumental eclipse of hope and an unprecedented collapse of meaning. Or to say it in another way, it is a lived experience of coping with a life of horrifying meaningless, hopelessness, and most important, lovelessness. Lovelessness. We look for explanations. We blame school violence on the availability of guns. Certainly, that is a problem. But if all the guns were taken out of circulation, it would not stop the proclivity to some form of violence towards others. We blame it on violence in the media of television, films, video games, and violent lyrics in popular music. This too is part of the problem, but it is time to see the picture from a wider lens. When Cain killed his brother Abel in the biblical story, one of the first recorded stories of family violence, modern mass media was not there to tempt him. He did not replicate a murder he saw on television or learn how to make a formula for death that he found on the internet. Our youth cannot make it alone. They need our love. They need to feel our arms around them wherever they may be. As a nation, we are in a deep cultural depression as well as a spiritual crisis. What is not said very much by people in the helping professions, such as social critics, preachers, sociologists, teachers, or others who come into intimate contact with youth, is that there is a crisis of the spirit, a crisis of faith in our society. And here I am not referring to any particular religion, but to faith in the self, faith in something higher than the self, and faith in one's family and one's community. Alienation is not overcome by analysis or by programs, but by love and compassion. I believe the emotional distancing we often see in youth can be subdued by the love ethic, not expressed sentimentally, but by valuing what young people have to say, by encouraging their participation in the things that mostly affect their lives. We are not here to act as if we are brothers and sisters, but to remember that we really are brothers and sisters, whose very reason for being is to love and care for one another. Let us recall the story of Hagar and Ishmael where we left off. A family in crisis, a woman and her son alone, out in the wilderness, homeless. No crisis hotline, no overnight shelter, no abuse counselor. She needs someone to hear her story, someone to help her figure things out, where she was going to live and how she was going to feed herself and her son. But there was no pastor, no prophet, no priest, no lay minister to help her figure it all out. According to the story, in the depths of her despair, an angel appeared at Hagar's side and asked, "Where are you coming from? And where are you going?" That, my friends, is a question we need to ask not only of our children and youth, but of many parents and families as well. Where are you coming from? And where are you going? Families are complicated. Like Hagar and Ishmael, too many of our children and families are out in the wilderness. Even though youth may show up in the classroom day after day, teachers and administrators never know what they may be facing in their families or their communities. Our youth cannot make it alone. They need our love. They need to feel our arms around them wherever they may be. And they need a church that can help them to know that they are loved, that they are not alone, that they have infinite worth, that they are connected to all of us and all of life, and they can make a difference, and that there is a joy in doing so. Some say that the angel appearing at Hagar's side was the voice of God. Others say that it was a still small voice within. I like to think of it as love's call, asking her to reflect not only on her dilemma, but on who she was and what she was doing with her life. Love calls out to us as well, asking us to remember who we are, that we are spiritual beings connected to something larger and more trustworthy than ourselves. The transcendent mystery and wonder of the universe asks us to call into existence that which has been forgotten, that we are not here to act as if we are brothers and sisters, but to remember that we really are brothers and sisters, whose very, whose very reason for being is to love and care for one another. This is the purpose of the church. If only we could commit ourselves to do the internal work necessary with children, youth, adults, and families to recover and integrate the lost parts of ourselves, to find the silences that lead to kids bullying kids, which leads to distancing, which leads to alienation, which leads to hopelessness and despair. If only we could recover those parts of the self that have been fragmented or suppressed. If only we could be more hospitable to each other. This is the work of the soul. Soul work is hard work, but it must be done if we are to be fully alive. One thing that makes it difficult is that it is transcendent. We must move beyond ourselves to the place of empathy and compassion, to the place of hospitality, hospitality of the human spirit. This is what counters alienation, nihilism, and brokenness in the human family. Soul work, compassion, hospitality. It is the work of the church. It is our salvation. It is what ministry is, to save souls through hospitality of the human spirit. So may it be.
Our closing hymn is "Who is My Neighbor" by Amanda Eudes Kessler, and the words will be projected. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please only with a mask on. So stand in body or in spirit and join us in the hymn, "Who is My Neighbor?"
Who is my neighbor? Every soul who lives upon the earth. I have been called to treat each one with dignity and worth, working for justice, seeking peace, and cultivating care, offering hope to those whose lives are laden with despair. When I can ease another's pain, I know I'll do my part. When I can bring another joy, I'll open up my heart. When I have more than someone else, I'll share the things I can. When I am tempted to be cruel, I'll strive to understand. Who is my neighbor? Earth itself and all the beings there. Flora and fauna, fish and fowl, the trees that grace the air. River and prairie, sea and sky, I honor and respect. These are my neighbors, these I vow to cherish and protect. Oh, may we build a world where all have everything they need. May we be free from hate and fear, from violence and from greed. May our lives be tributes to compassion, love, and trust, till we are kin to all the world and all are kin to us.
What a wonderful message in that song. Our benediction is by Laura Lynn Bellany. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. And I want to thank you, Grace, for sharing the reading with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to having you up there again. If there's those of you who would like to either, I don't suppose you could ask questions since you didn't, since you were not the author of it, but if you wanted to share any discussions or observations from the sermon, please remain here. Be aware that the comments that you make will be posted online. Is there anyone who wanted to make a comment?
I'd say it's basic, but you guys know me. Just trying to say the idea that the Bible does have some amazing passages. It's part of what of who we are as a faith. But there's some lines in there that I'm just not going to give the same degree of love to that other than others. Every time you have the chosen people and the blessed ones, there seems to be a corollary package that says now we've got the outgroup, the damned, the forsaken, the pariahs. That window is lit by indirect light from a nuclear furnace that is producing more in a finger snap of time than we as humans have ever produced in our whole danged lives. The love that holds and kindles that light carries the weight of our sun and the weight of galaxies. When somebody wants to tell you you're a member of the outgroup, that you're unsavable, that you're a pariah, I'd say don't look to scripture. Look straight up, wear your eye protection, and realize that we are in a world that is a whole heck of a lot bigger than these writers envisioned.
Thank you, Bill. Well, thank you all for joining us here today, and we now invite you into the parish hall for fellowship and, oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
And maybe we can give a few seconds for people to think. Yeah, well, one thing that stood out to me was thinking about the next generation of children that we're raising. When we look at, when we say our children, look how materialistic they are, look how poorly their morals have formed. Well, it should be, I think, pretty obvious to say that children don't get to choose their ideologies. When we say, look how disgraceful children are these days, we should feel a great and deep shame at the bad job that we have done, because we gave them a culture that allowed people like Steve Jobs to market directly to them and say, here, take an iPhone. And if that's what you're going to complain about, that's our fault, not their fault.
Thank you. Grace?
I also think when our principals say that there's an interconnectedness toward all of us, I think it's safe to say that we are our ancestors, and we are our parents and our grandparents, and we are our children, because we're all connected to them. So we should treat everyone, including our children and our relatives, the way we want to be treated and the way we treat ourselves.
Thank you, Grace. Anyone else?
I think we can be awfully quick sometimes to look for some place to blame. And I say we raise up people who have fought against all the discord of our society, and look to people like Tinka, who was a special ed teacher for 40 years. And myself, I worked in the school districts too for a dozen years, these people who have touched the children and taught them better. And I think we need to lift up what they've done much more than what we hear about.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else? Anyone online? Okay, thank you all for joining us here today. We now invite you into the Parish Hall for Fellowship and our first Sunday luncheon. May you go in peace.